Welcome. This is session number 3 of our WrightED series. Sometimes WrightED is a tongue twister for me, and I'm not sure why, but we've had a great first 2 sessions. So thanks for everyone for joining us. My name's Kate Jones on behalf of the Wright Opera House, and before I turn things over to Tanya with the Uncompahgre Watershed Partnership, I just want to mention, because I have a captive audience on behalf of the Right, a couple things we have going on. Um, we're actually closing for 2 weeks for Thanksgiving break, but don't you fret because there is always something going on, and we'll pick back up in December. We've got a big Christmas movie marathon lineup, which will be super fun. And this also feels like the perfect time for me to plug in February. There's a big staple event of ours, the Ouray Winter Wine Festival, which is a super high-end event. We've got like 8 different wineries, a cidery, 2 different distilleries, all from the western slope of Colorado that you can come and just taste away at your leisure. So super fun event. Tickets are on sale. Let me just double check my notes to make sure that there's not anything else that I like to make sure I mention, but I don't know. I think that's it. Oh, a couple of Zoom things. So, of course, we're probably all familiar with the Zoom function, but for those that aren't, there's a great function called chat at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you can type your questions while the presenters are speaking. That's a great tool. If you've got a question, type it there. You won't forget it. And then we will answer those questions after each um, presenter concludes. And we'll probably have a break in between, um, I think, right, Tanya? I think we'll have a little break.
Yes. Yeah, I
Um,
think we'll do it after this
anyway,
speaker if he shows up.
perfect. Okay. Well, I guess the last thing I want to say is thank you to Dee Williams for organizing this WrightED series. She's been fantastic. And thank you also to Tanya Ishikawa, who, on behalf of the Uncompahgre Watershed Partnership, put all these speakers together for us. This series has been really, really incredible. So thank you to you both. All right, take it away, Tanya.
You're welcome. Yeah, so Uncompahgre Watershed Partnership, we call ourselves UWP. Yeah, Dee was nice to call me because she wanted to have water as the topic, and we know a lot of people working in water, so I was able to pull a few people together, and I really appreciate all the people who said yes to this. UWP, our mission is to restore and protect the natural, scenic, and economic values of the Upper Uncompahgre watershed. And that is, we mainly work from the headwaters up at Lake Como down to the northern Ouray County line. We have a watershed plan that includes more information about the rest of the watershed that goes all the way to Delta. But we mainly work up here because we feel that our impacts can affect everybody downstream as well. And we work with partnerships. We don't own any land ourselves, and we need partners to work in the rivers and in the riparian areas. So we really appreciate all the organizations who collaborate with us, and one of those is the town of Ridgway. And so we really appreciate, and I appreciate being part of their activities with water when they can pull us in. I know Preston's going to talk about a growing water smart program, and I was fortunate to go to a conference with the with a few members of the town a couple years ago, and it was really eye-opening for water conservation and just being able to talk to other people about what we're hoping for Ridgway in the future as far as having a good water supply. So without further ado, we'll have Preston Neill from the town of Ridgway speak first.
Hi, thank you, Tanya. My name is Preston Neill. I serve as the town manager for Ridgway. I've been in the role for about 6 years now. And as Tanya was saying, I'll talk a little bit about our growing water smart action plan here at the town of Ridgway, which, as Tanya said, she was nice enough to join us on a cohort a couple years ago as we put that action plan in place. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Really appreciate the invitation. This is exciting. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. And if Kate or Tanya, if you can holler when everything looks the way it's supposed to, that would be great.
Okay, there it is. Yep, looks great.
Perfect.
Great. So as I was saying, I'll talk a little bit about our Growing Water Smart Action Plan. But generally speaking, I'm here today to talk about the town of Ridgway's water sources, our water treatment program, a little bit about our distribution system, just everything water for the town of Ridgway. I will tell you that I'm not a subject matter expert by any means. I'm more of a generalist, just given my role as a town administrator. I think I can hold my own when talking about water, but I'm happy to answer any questions, at the end. And even the technical type ones, I'll do my best to give answers to. So thanks for bearing with me. And again, I'm excited to be here. To start, Tanya's seen this map before. It's meant to give a system overview. Everything is really in this image here. To start, I want to call attention to that orange box on the left. It says Ridgway Ditch. Where it points to is an orange dot, and that dot represents what we call the Beaver Creek diversion point. I really characterize that as our primary water source off of Beaver Creek. And from that diversion point, water is transported into the Ridgway Ditch. And in no way, shape, or form does it travel linearly like it shows in that dashed orange line to that body of water in the middle of the image. It meanders for about 5 miles, some crazy twists and turns, some waterfalls even, through that ditch down to the town's storage reservoir at Lake Tonawanda. And again, that's that body of water in the middle there. Again, I do characterize that as the town's primary water source off of Beaver Creek and through the Ridgway Ditch. Another one worth highlighting is called, and I have no idea why it's called Happy Hollow. It's really Cottonwood Creek. We have a diversion on Cottonwood Creek, and that water is transported directly to another couple bodies of water, our pre-sedimentation ponds that sit directly above our water treatment facility. But you can see that dot there labeled Happy Hollow Ditch and a very short segment of dashed line down to the pre-sedimentation ponds. And then, of course, you see the incorporated limits of the town of Ridgway outlined there. What I was saying at the forefront was, our entire water system you can see in this aerial image. And so I always like to start with, that 30,000 foot level view of everything. Sources, you don't really see water treatment in here, but distribution system as well. I think we know this image very well. It's just a quick image of the Sneffels Range. I just want to note on the left-hand side, you see the western face. Well, you see White House Mountain, but off that western face into that draw is where Beaver Creek is. And our diversion point sits in those foothills, right off the western face of White House Mountain in Beaver Creek, right shortly after Forest Service area on privately held property, which is where our diversion point is. And then this is our storage. This is another aerial image of our storage reservoir. We call it Lake Tonawanda, Lake O for short. I don't know many people that actually call it Lake Tonawanda. Around here, we just call it Lake O. It was expanded. I saw Tanya raise her hand. She calls it, yeah. It was expanded about 10 or 11 years ago, and it can hold a really decent amount of water. And again, not trying to be redundant, but the water from the Beaver Creek diversion and the Ridgway Ditch gets into Lake Tonawanda. It really depends on the year, but we really aim to not draw water from Lake Tonawanda. For example, two years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, it was a really great water year. It was somewhat wet summer, and we didn't have to draw from Lake Tonawanda at any point, given the conditions I just mentioned, and that that the Happy Hollow or Cottonwood Creek source was able to meet the demand throughout the course of the summer months, and that includes the high months of irrigation and everything too. This next image is, shows towards the top there, we call them pre-sedimentation ponds, to let, that water settle out before it goes into you'll see a structure there at the top of the image. That's our water treatment plant. And those two cylinders are water storage tanks. They're both 300,000 gallon storage tanks. But water is transported from, kind of in the center there. You can see the water that comes directly from Lake Tonawanda. On the left-hand side, you can see, like kind of a draw along County Road 5, and that's where the water comes from, the Cottonwood Creek Happy Hollow diversion point. And then I have a couple slides here that are meant to show or get into, our water treatment program. And I think Tanya's been in our water treatment plant. Maybe some of you all have before. It's not a big facility. It's really, there's kind of a dichotomy between pre-treatment and main filtration in that treatment plant. In short, we have two separate rooms. This is what we call the old room or the first room, which is where we pre-treat for things like color, taste, and odor. It's not the best picture. It was just the only one I could find at the time. But on the right-hand side of the image, you see a big tank that is fairly new, just in the last year and a half. And that's filled with granular activated carbon. And we used GAC as the acronym for granular activated carbon. And that is the medium we use for pre-treating the water before it goes to the main room for treatment. And again, just in the last year and a half, we transitioned to GAC as that pre-filtration treatment alternative. Prior to that, we had been applying chlorine dioxide to treat color, taste, and odor before it went through and I'll just transition to the next image, the main membrane filtration treatment portion of the facility. We have two cells in there that ultimately do the bulk of the work for getting the water where it needs to be before there's a final chlorine injection as mandated by the state. Everyone has to maintain a certain chlorine residual before the water heads to those two storage tanks that I mentioned. And each of those storage tanks holds 300,000 gallons of water. Let's say it's July 15th in any given year. The town consumes probably about one of those tanks on any given day. And that includes irrigation, high irrigation season and everything. In, let's say, January 15th, naturally that amount dwindles to probably about half of that, 150,000 gallons a day, give or take. So about half of one of those tanks. So I'm just trying to paint a picture for y'all. More about our distribution. Well, we've been, going over the water treatment program, but we're coming, transitioning down into the distribution system. So I guess sorry to go back on the image. After there's, some chlorine contact time in these tanks, the water's drawn down into the main distribution system through the mains and the service lines and ultimately comes out faucets. But I wanted to talk a little bit about a big project that we've been taking on, and it's been a long time coming. We call it the ductile iron pipe replacement project. The image at the top right is a little more fundamental, and I'm just trying to paint a picture for what it is. That at top right, you see a blue line that runs just from short of our water treatment plant down a very steep hill, and then down Amelia Street to about Moffett Street. You see it highlighted in blue. A couple years ago, we had a main break on that line in blue, and you see the break on the left. Pretty big break due to electrolysis, and you can see some vulnerable spots in that line. That's made of very old ductile iron pipe, about 45 years old. A lot of us didn't even know that was in there. And as soon as we discovered that after the break, which was a big deal for our town and caused, about a day shut off, a boil water advisory. It was a really big deal. We worked really hard to get the financing mechanisms in place to replace this line, just given, not very resilient. We needed to get it a little more new age. And so, like I said, we worked hard to get the financing in place to take it on. We got a loan through the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority, a grant through the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, Energy and Mineral Impact fund program. So, huge kudos to them. And we've just in the last several months started undertaking construction. Those images at the bottom kind of show, well, they don't kind of show, they show the trenching and the temporary line needed to accommodate the work that's being undertaken. But we're excited to replace this really, really old line of ductile iron pipe with HDPE and C900 plastic pipe to come into this century. And then another even bigger project I want to highlight, and some of you all hopefully are at least a little familiar with it, is our Beaver Creek Diversion Restoration Project. A little over a year ago, health of 2024, I'm pretty sure it was something like a 500-year event, wiped out our diversion infrastructure at the Beaver Creek diversion point where we transport water into the Ridgeway ditch. I have some before and after images. Before is meant to show where the water used to come down the creek and over our grizzly. Well, we call it a grizzly. It's like a water screen that diverts water into the trough and siphons out all the small gravel and such. The image on right shows that the water doesn't even go that way anymore, and you see a lot of mud, debris, boulders, trees, other stuff. Here are some before images of right after the water screen down the trough. This is what it looked like for many, many years. And here's another one just to show, what a normal day looked like when all that was working the way it was supposed to. And then these are after photos just of the magnitude of the debris flow that came through there last August. So, well, 2 Augusts ago, really. And it still looks like this because we're not salvaging any of the stuff that we used to use. We're going with entirely different methods of diverting the water, namely a Coanda screen and an infiltration gallery. And here's some more after photos. The one on left is similar to the one a couple slides ago. That's where the water used to come down to the grizzly. You turn 180 degrees, turn around 180 degrees, and that's where you see the water coming from now. The creek and the ditch are no longer aligned fundamentally, but and really these photos don't show the magnitude of what we're dealing with up there. Anyone who's been up there can tell you that the photos don't do it justice. And then here's some photos of construction activity that's been taking place over the last several months. We're really excited about the progress. It certainly won't be done in 2025. They'll need to return in 2026. They'll probably shut down around Thanksgiving, but they've made some really great progress piping the Ridgeway ditch, temporarily diverting water, and starting to work on the diversion improvements. And then, Tanya mentioned this at the forefront. Really want to talk a little bit about our growing water smart efforts in all things, climate change, sustainability, water conservation. The town was lucky enough to be selected with a number of other communities a couple falls ago to attend a growing water smart workshop in Grand Junction. We learned about the best approaches for integrating land use and water planning. And it really was a worthwhile workshop in a number of ways, but it was really cool to see what other communities are doing and prioritizing. Tanya could help me. We had City of Grand Junction, City of Fruta, Steamboat Springs, Cortez, and plenty of other communities there from around the state. We went through, it was a 3-day workshop. We went through a number of exercises and sessions, just learning about a lot of different things. I wanted to highlight the Water Smart message we put together. I think this was a pretty big outcome, not just for Ridgeway, but all the participating communities. Our group for Ridgeway was one of the smallest groups, naturally, because we were the smallest community there. But we collectively came up with a Water Smart message to really buy into, lock into, and drive home for, not just elected officials and, town staff members and stakeholders, but really our community. And so I won't read this slide, but this is what we collectively pinpointed and put together and came back and tried to, start to establish that buy-in that I was mentioning. I'll leave this up just for a couple seconds in case anyone's reading it. But I think from what I remember, because it was several years ago now, we were we felt really good about how we collectively over the course of several hours, put this message together. And then I think most noteworthy or the biggest deliverable from participating in that workshop were the several goals and the associated outcomes for our formal action plan to take back to our respective communities and do our best to start to implement. And doing our best is the key phrase, because you know each of our communities has a whole host of priorities and other work plan items to try to accomplish. And so trying to accomplish all this while doing everything else is the big challenge. But we've made a commitment by participating in that workshop that we would try to keep all of this at the forefront each and every budget cycle and work planning session. And that's really what we've tried to do. But you see the whole host of goals here, everything from reducing landscape water usage on municipal turf to, at the bottom, reducing residential landscape water usage. We've made some strides on some of these. Actually, I think I would make an argument that we've made some strides on all of them, but we've made some strides on some of them more than others. And this is my last slide. I just want to kind of showcase one of the pilot projects we undertook to hit on one of those goals of reducing municipal turf. This was, I think, last fall. There was a section of Hartwell Park on the east side near the parking lot where we took out a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, I can't remember the square footage, but a decent amount of non-functional turf and replaced it with xeriscaping and low water-wise plantings. And, kind of a pilot there to see how well received it would be and to kind of get in that realm of walking the walk and not just talking the talk. But this was directly associated or a direct outcome from that action plan and participating in that workshop. That's the last slide I have, and I think that's my time. I appreciate you all listening. I really do, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wow, you were so good with your time. Good job.
Thank you.
And yeah, so many different things. And you didn't even get to stormwater and wastewater.
Yeah.
Water. So Lois has a question in the chat, which is, while the Beaver Creek Diversion Restoration Project is happening, where is our water coming from now?
It's a great question. So our water now is coming from still the Beaver Creek diversion and the Happy Hollow source. We have a steady stream of water that comes from that Happy Hollow Cottonwood Creek water source, and then we deployed a temporary solution up at Beaver Creek. And when I say temporary solution, I mean like Band-Aids and railroad ties and yellow mine pipe, and we're diverting water from the diversion point just in a very makeshift way. So we're still garnering quite a bit of water. Just as much, if not more, than we did in the past, just given the efforts we've been making. And not to be too long-winded, but I will say, I mentioned earlier with Beaver Creek, we try not to draw water from Lake Tonawanda throughout the course of any summer, but it's not a big shocker when we do have to do that. The water from Happy Hollow and Cottonwood Creek traditionally has been cleaner than the water that comes from the Beaver Creek Ridgeway Ditch and Lake Tonawanda. I don't think many of us really understand why that is. Maybe there's some that do, but we've always liked to use the water from Cottonwood Creek and Happy Hollow because it's easier on the water treatment plant. So I forgot to say that earlier, but that's my answer.
Cool. Virginia has a question.
Hi, Preston. Thank you. That was a really awesome presentation, really good behind the scenes glance at what goes on for our drinking water.
Thank you.
I was wondering, so I think community members have asked Tanya and I about Cottonwood Creek and Cottonwood Park in Ridgeway and like why the creek does not flow into the park anymore. I'm not sure if you have the answer to this. But I was also curious myself and wasn't able to provide an answer. But if the Happy Hollow ditch is just pulling all the water, but because people were asking if like why the creek come through the park anymore.
Yeah, that's another great question, and I don't know, all the formal answers. The town does not draw, the town draws what it's entitled to at Happy Hollow, but there's other rights holders on Cottonwood Creek. And I think fundamentally, most of that water, if not all, gets pulled before it gets down into, into the incorporated limits of town, down to, what we know as Cottonwood Park. Yeah, and Cottonwood Creek that kind of cuts through town. Yeah, there's a lot of times where it just seems like there's never any water in there, and it really is a shame. But it's been something that we've looked at and tried to have conversations centered on how to get more water in that lower section of creek before it gets to the river. But there's just a lot that goes into that. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, and I mean, as people may or may not know, that in across Colorado and maybe even the West, there's a lot of rivers are over appropriated, meaning they were given rights, junior and senior rights to water in the rivers and streams, but those rivers and streams may not have had all that water to begin with. And especially now with climate change and aridification, there's even less water available to meet those water rights.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask. Oh, there's Phil. Okay, Phil, go ahead. You have a question.
Yeah, just a quick question, and thank you, Preston. This is really helpful, especially like the aerial views. I just like looking at aerial views and maps. I just a question about Lake O. Um, could you, for someone that's very, very ignorant of the history of the origins of our water supply system, why is Lake O not a routine source of water supply for us? Why do we not want to draw from it if at all possible?
No, great question. Um, our aim has just been to try to meet demand from the town from that Cottonwood Creek Happy Hollow source, and really just keep Lake Tonawanda filled up as much as possible. We do suspect that, and it's I don't think it's breaking news or anything. We do suspect that Lake Tonawanda, there's evaporation and a little bit of seepage, but we do need to do some more studies on how much Lake Tonawanda is seeping. And we do also suspect for anything that is seeping, we recollect in the Cottonwood Creek Happy Hollow diversion, but that's kind of hearsay. We haven't really pinpointed that for sure. But to directly answer your question, fundamentally, we just try to meet our goal is to meet demand from the Happy Hollow source so we can keep Lake Tonawanda as full as possible and really there for a rainy day is what I would say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like for something that we've really been experiencing now. Luckily, we were able to get support from a neighboring landowner, or actually a senior right holder on the Happy Hollow Cottonwood Creek diversion, to let us use the bulk of their water for this last summer when we were dealing with just so much in a short amount of time. And we still had to pull from Lake Tonawanda, but not as much as we thought we would have to. So anyway, there's a lot of variables, but we really like that lake to be as full as possible and there for if there ever is a rainy day, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I like the irony of it being there for a rainy day because it's usually the rainy days that make it completely
Yeah.
unnecessary.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice. There's a question from Dee in the chat, which is, what is the per capita consumption of water consumed in Ridgway?
Dee has a great question that I used to know off the top of my head. I can maybe during the next presentation try to get that information and put it in the chat. Is that okay? Because I don't know the answer right now.
That sounds great. Good. Yeah, let's see. My usage. Oh, I have my book right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a tiered system. I mean, I think people on this call may know, but like, why does Ridgway use a tiered system, and what is that exactly about charging for the water?
Yeah, I mean, we have a base allotment. So yeah, if we want to get into the water rate structure and stuff, I mean, we have a base allotment of 5,000 gallons. Most households don't come anywhere near the 5,000 gallons per month. But yeah, we do have a tiered system for anyone who goes over that 5,000 gallon per month allotment, pays the overage based on that. We do have some folks who use a substantial amount of water in any given month, and that's okay. They pay for it. But our system, well, I mean, any water system and the programs that are available to us help us really indicate when there might be something wrong with someone's water use, like a leak. And so we're always chasing water. I mean, when I say chasing water, I mean our public works crews notified when something doesn't look right. They go out and they can pinpoint if something's wrong on someone's service line or on a main or something like that. So I'm getting in the weeds. I apologize, but yeah, that's a little bit about our water rate structure, the base allotment, and then I'll try to find the per capita water consumption on any given month for right now.
Cool. I was going to ask that ductile iron pipeline replacement. Two questions about, which is like, what's next? I think I remember seeing a text or an email about that. The town's been so great about, letting us know when water's being turned off and what and else. And I was just wondering, like, how do we know if any other pipes in town are that? Like, did you do an inventory of the other pipes, or is that a specific one because goes from such a long distance? They did that particular way, or?
Yeah, we have an inventory, and we're pretty darn sure that this is the last segment of pipe that is made up of really old ductile iron. We're really certain of that, and so excited to get it done. But the first part of your question is what's next? I mean, this has been a very high maintenance project requiring water outages, as you know, Tanya, and it's we do it late at night, but it's still not that cool to have your water off. But it's just the nature of the project. Ridgeway Valley worked really hard. They were supposed to be done by now, but they're not. In our excavation moratorium in the right of way is in like 3 days. So we've had them shut down, and they're going to come back in March. But they replaced all the way from the top section up by the water plant down that steep hill to about the intersection with Sabeta. So next March they'll come back and start fresh, and it really shouldn't take them, I'm making this up, but maybe 2 or 3 weeks to get from Sabeta to that area at Moffett. But it's going to require some more, water shut-offs, and it takes its toll, and it's an inconvenience for sure. But that's what's left.
And I was wondering, with the water conservation program in town, or Growing Water Smart, are there any ways for residents to get involved, or even business owners, or will there be in the future to conserve more water?
That's the goal is to like going back to the Water Smart Action Plan, hit on those outcomes by way of getting residents more involved, perhaps replacing some of their turf, instituting some sort of turf replacement program. I'm kind of making this up, but Tanya, we talked about this at length during those 3 days. I mean, there's plenty of ways. And then we're a member of Colorado Waterwise now, and so we've been trying to use a lot of the marketing material, or the communication and marketing materials through Colorado Waterwise to push out to community members to kind of keep all this at the top of mind. So we've done some infancy type stuff, but there's a lot more for us to really do. And with a small community, we have limited staffing and resources, but I'm excited because I think there's a lot more we can do, and I'm hoping we can do it soon.
Yeah, great. Any other questions out there from anybody go ahead, Phil.
On the Water Smart program, can you just from your own perspective describe how it works when you invite organizations like the Watershed Partnership to weigh in on how you go about planning landscape design and projects like the one that is on the east side of Hartwell Park and so on. Just how do you imagine that, or how do you what's your optimal arrangement there? How, in terms of how you ask the public and organizations like UWP to weigh in on things like that. What does that look like from your angle, and is it working well?
Yeah, from where I'm sitting, I'd love to put something a little more formal in place for garnering input for any more major undertakings that really hit on the action plan, like for example, the pilot project that we did in the park or anything else. Right now, I think it's informal and, I hate to say it, but we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. But I'd love, again, I'm trying to be redundant, but I think a little more formality by way of identifying the stakeholders. Of course, UWP would be number one on the list to, solicit input from before we solidify any sort of, plan or structure for moving forward. And then moving forward a little more collectively and cohesively. So, I'm not trying to dance around the answer. Right now, I don't think we have any sort of formal um, plan on how to approach it. But that's how I kind of envision, if that was part of your question, moving forward in the future and trying to hit on any of those goals or associated outcomes.
Hey,
Right.
Preston, going along with my question about per capita usage, is there any idea about what landscape versus personal usage as far as water goes? Is there any way of breaking that down or?
Yes, we undertook you mean, let me make sure I know what you mean. So for park irrigation use
Yeah,
versus
parks and
residential
lawns
consumption?
versus
Yeah.
residents drinking water.
So we have a breakout of what the town uses for the parks, and we have a non-potable line that comes down that water did, and we capture what we use and what we put on the parks. But there's not a separation on the residential side on what someone uses in the faucets in their home versus what they use outside irrigating, if that's your question.
Yeah, yeah, I was just curious.
Although maybe that's kind of told by the number of gallons that you're saying, for instance, in the winter compared to the summer, correct? I mean, individual home, we don't really know,
Yeah.
but it's about half as much, it sounds like, in the winter. So maybe people are using about 50% of their water for landscaping in the summer.
Yeah, and
Also,
and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah, we have some data on that. I can try to dig that up and share it, but that's a great observation, and I think generally, I think you could hang your hat on, about 50%, given
yeah,
how much people, water their lawns and use water outside in the summer.
right.
Yeah, and the non-potable I think is so great to be using that.
Mhm.
And I guess it's another question that I'm sure like it doesn't have an answer yet, but I love the idea of using gray water. And I know that the town did a little research at that in the past, and it was maybe too expensive to install, but I wonder in the future if there's potential for either individual buildings or different places to use a gray water system.
Yeah, we've done some research on that. We were part of the town participated on a stakeholder committee for Regulation 86 when it was being amended at the state level. Um, we could talk a whole other session about Regulation 86 and gray water, paths for gray water consumption, but I'm not aware of any systems that have been permitted throughout the state. Really, it
Right.
really is cost prohibitive if you do it in the way that Regulation 86 requires to have like a privately held residential gray water system. You have things like laundry to landscape, which is the easiest, and then some more intricate gray water ways. And maybe there's people on the call that know more than I do, but yeah, if the town council ever wanted to institute regulations and standards for gray water use, we could certainly do that. That's the easy part. The hard part would be the much harder part would be being able to get them permitted and
Mm.
plan reviewed according to Regulation 86 and then our standards and regulations, and then ensuring that it's built appropriately.
Right.
Yeah, and probably everybody on this call may know, but I mean, so gray water, just using water from the building or your household that's
Mhm.
already been used for other purposes out on the landscape. yeah, is what I was talking about. The reason I let the questions go over is because I don't believe Eric Wordle has arrived. If Eric is on there somewhere just with a different name, but I don't think he is, please let me know. I've actually not had tons of communication with him before now. I was just a phone call that I had. I was just assuming that we had this set. So I'm sorry about that. But thank you very much, Preston. That was really helpful. And yeah, it's so nice to have your collaboration and transparency. You know, you're not, yeah, you're not just telling us what we want to hear.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Preston. Really interesting.
So yeah, so unfortunately, yeah, Eric, I haven't met in the past, and yeah, I was really looking forward to him being here today, but it didn't work out. So I was wondering, Kate, if you think 10-minute break this time would be fine, or if we just want to end earlier at the end.
I don't know. Maybe split the difference and call it 7.
Ah, okay. Sounds good. Okay, so we're going to have another presentation, Virginia, and she'll tell you more about herself, or maybe I can introduce her a little bit when we get back from break. And now I'm happy to introduce Virginia Weiskopf, who UWP will be losing soon. Well, actually, we're trying to keep her on for a small project. But she has been with UWP for this year, coming to us in February, March, through the River Conservation Corps program, which is a really wonderful new AmeriCorps program that trains up scientists, young scientists mainly, or I guess emerging scientists, I should say, because they can be any age, but they are emerging into their careers. And you know, regular AmeriCorps programs, I don't know if people realize that, but the people are a little bit fresher. Like I said, they're emerging into their careers, so their training happens right there at the organizations and companies that they work for. And with this one, River Conservation Corps, we're really fortunate because an organization called River Science and the state also helps to train up our members so that they are even more valuable for us and have more skills, and that our limited staff here does not have to do all of that training. So Virginia, please tell us about water quality and what you've been doing here while with UWP.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm going to be able to talk about my service this season with UWP and some of the work I've been doing in the watershed. So I'll get my screen ready. Let's see. Okay. One moment. Okay, does that look okay for everybody?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, hi, I'm Virginia Weiskopf. I am a hydrographer for UWP, and I also have been able to work with the Colorado Water Conservation Board this season. I'm mostly going to just be talking about my work with UWP, and this is the intersection of water quality and quantity in the Upper Uncompahgre watershed. And I wanted to show this photo kind of really highlights the work that the program has really captured this season. Down here is a water quality testing kit. I am in the stream. This is Sneffels Creek up near Camp Bird, taking a flow measurement. And then also in the background is the Atlas Mill. So that is kind of talking about all of the mining and impact on the watershed. So as Tadia introduced earlier, UWP is a nonprofit. We are involved in various watershed projects and education opportunities within Uray County, and we exist to protect the natural, scenic, and economic values of the Upper Uncompahgre watershed, and from the headwaters to the northern Uray County line. So also to quickly introduce the watershed, this is Lake Como, the headwaters. If you did not know, these are some images from the staff and board retreat this past October. And this, the Uncompahgre flows into the Gunnison River, connects down in Delta, and then which connects to the Colorado River. So, yeah, this is a really cool site. I'd never been up there before until this season. So, Uncompahgre translates to red water, muddy water, or a water that is slow moving. Uncompahgre is a Ute word, a Ute Native American word, and I wanted to quickly do a land acknowledgement that we are on their ancestral lands and acknowledge their historic and contemporary connection to the resources. This is the Uncompahgre River in this image to the right here. Looks pretty muddy, a little reddish. And also there's me doing fly fishing. The slow moving water has made this area so famous for its fly fishing and really resourceful in that way. So not all the red muddy water in the watershed is background. What I mean by that is that what background is what's naturally occurring. So these are some of our most impaired streams in the watershed. On the left and right is Red Mountain Creek, and then also Gray Copper Gulch is in the middle. This is all up Highway 550, and a lot of the work we do is determining how much of the water is impacted by mining runoff, acid mine drainage. So a brief history on the mining in Ouray County. The two major areas are the Red Mountain Mining District and then the Camp Bird Mine, which is considered part of the Upper Uncompahgre Mining District. Red Mountain Mining District is along the infamous Highway 550 $1 million highway between Ouray and Silverton and has had numerous mines over the years for the purpose of mining copper, lead, zinc, gold, and silver in the late 1800s. Some of the mines include the Genesee Mine and the famous Yankee Girl Mine. However, the mining boom of Red Mountain died in the silver crisis of 1893 with the repeal of the Sherman Silver Purchase Act. This was causing the US's gold reserve to deplete, which was leading to an economic depression. So the silver mining boom ended up slowing in our area. But fast forward 50 years, Newmont Mining Company created the Idorado mines from what was there. That's a name combining Idaho and Colorado. If you didn't know, that was between a two company merger. And this was during World War II for the war effort needing strategic metals, including lead, copper, and zinc. It closed in 1979 and has been considered a legacy mine area still owned by Idorado Newmont. You can drive by it along Highway 550, and here on display are some of the minerals that came from the mines at the Ouray History Museum. On the other side of the mountain is the far more prosperous sister mining area of Ouray County, Camp Bird. Camp Bird originates from the birds that would notoriously steal the miners' lunch in that area. And in this area were gold, lead, zinc, copper, and some silver was mined in this area. And with the gold being there, that made it more prosperous and able to survive past any of the economic depressions. It was regularly mined and operated until 1990, resulting in one of the most prosperous mines in Colorado history. And in the last 35 years, the owners have varied and are now owned by a group called Thorin Resources. So the metals that were mined over 100 years ago can still be found in our watershed today. This is from drainage of metals from mine adits or portals, erosion of mine waste and tailings. There's really acidic waters up there. This is from iron pyrite, which lowers the pH and can cause corrosion of leaching of the metals in the water. And that is that orange residue you'll see on the streams. And there's also a higher load of metals in the streams during high flows. So these images down here shows that precipitation of high metals. The water itself is not orange, but the sediment along the bank is. And yeah. So the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment has a list of impaired or threatened streams. These are the listed ones for the Uncompahgre Gunnison watershed that are targeted for a total maximum daily load designation, which I will discuss in a little bit. And these segments are considered impaired for aquatic life or agriculture water use. The ones that are highlighted are the streams that are sampled by UWP specifically, and all of them are considered impaired for aquatic life. And then the Uncompahgre River is the one considered impaired for agriculture, being at its lower segments here in Ridgway and Uray. So Colorado is a participating organization in Colorado River Watch, the statewide volunteer water quality monitoring program. We have up to 15 sites in the summer, which scales back to 6 in the winter for accessibility reasons. And so River Watch tests for 13 metals, and the ones that are detected above the legal limit in our watershed include zinc, cadmium, copper, manganese, lead, and arsenic. Also, aluminum, iron, metals that are detected but not tested by Riverwatch, but other entities are silver. And then also the pH being below 6.5 or 6 is considered an impairment on water quality. And when we test Red Mountain Creek, we find the pH to be between 2.5 to 3. And so for reference, that's about the pH of lemon juice or vinegar. So definitely very acidic water. Here is a map of our Riverwatch sites. So this is Uray County. Over here in the southwest corner, that 4 group of sites are those Camp Bird, Upper Uncompahgre mining area sites. We sample along Governor Basin, Sneffels Creek, and Imogene Creek. To the southeast is the Red Mountain sites. So that includes Red Mountain Creek, Commodore Gulch, and Gray Copper Gulch. And then at our lower sites, we have Dallas Creek, Cow Creek, and then sites along the Uncompahgre River above and below the reservoir. And we also have a site over here to the west. That one is the East Fork of Dallas Creek up near the Blue Lakes trailhead. So this season, I've been taking flow measurements, which have been vital to our Riverwatch sampling to understand the load of metals going through the watershed. This is a captured volume in cubic feet per second, sorry. And we use a flow tracker too, which is a weighting acoustic Doppler velocimeter. This is what it looks like and what it looks like deployed. And we use the USGS midsection method of taking velocity and area within subsections through an entire cross section of the stream. When are the concentrations the highest? So when we take our measurements, we find that there are higher concentrations at low flow at the higher sites. This is due to less dilution in the fall when there's less precipitation or snowmelt. There's no longer any runoff. And at our lower sites, such as on the Unk, we find higher concentrations during peak flow when there's a lot of heavily draining of water of snowmelt runoff from the tributaries into the river. So here are just images of the Riverwatch data for Imogene and Gray Copper Gulch. They're finding high concentrations of zinc in those fall months, but for the Uncompahgre, that is during May or June during runoff. So a total maximum daily load is when you are finding the maximum load of a metal that is going through a water body while still trying to meet the target concentration of the state standard, taking stream flow into consideration. So that's just basically taking your stream flow, your measure of your concentration, and just multiplying it by a conversion factor to find your daily load in pounds per day for metals specifically. So this graph I made, this one is comparing the zinc concentrations on the Uncompahgre River. I used the stream flow data at the USGS gauge in Ridgway, just because this is our first season taking stream flow measurements. So there's just not a lot of data. And we look at the flow duration intervals. So from your 0 to 10% of the time is during those really high flows. And then that goes up to 100% of time at your base flow, your low flows. So this graph shows the concentration of zinc at the time of that flow duration interval. And at 40% of the time, during moist conditions or high flows, you can find sometimes the zinc concentrations going through the Uncompahgre can exceed the aquatic life standard for zinc. So Red Mountain has its name for a reason. What was the state of the watershed pre-mining? It is difficult to determine what it was like. There was no one there to test or report what the water was like in the late 1800s. In 2008, the USGS came here and did a report, a study comparing the stream to the natural background levels and to the stream flow at the time. And they determined that the creek naturally was already acidic and metal rich from that iron pyrite. So is the state of Red Mountain Creek natural or due to acid mine drainage? Experts say it's about 50-50. So going on to how to clean up the watershed, in 1992, there was a final agreement between Idorado and the state to clean up the legacy mines acquired by Idorado. And the metal of focus for the consent decree is zinc, as it's the most difficult to remove. And they had 3 remedial action zones. Idorado has mines also in the Telluride Valley, so that was one zone. The High Country and also Red Mountain Valley. And the cleanup objectives include reducing the releases of metals and metal concentrations to protect aquatic life. And I'll point out in this image to the left, that is on the Silver Mountain mine, kind of near Corkscrew Gulch. And that's just one example of a collapsed mine portal or adit. And you can see the acid mine drainage, that really orange residue coming out of the mine. So to a map of showing what the remedial action zones include there's the Telluride area, and it's kind of clumped in with the High Country area that kind of is spanning between the mountain side from Uray County to San Miguel, and then also the Red Mountain mining area. Most of our focus is the Red Mountain Valley, but we do have one stream that is considered part of the High Country zone, and that one is Commodore Gulch. Camp Bird or any of the upper Uncompahgre mining district sites are not part of Idorado, so they were not included in this consent decree. However, Governor Basin, also up there, has been negotiated for an EPA federal consent decree between the EPA, Forest Service, and Thorin, the current owners, but has been stalled due to needing approval from the Forest Service DOJ appointee, but that seat has been vacant due to the 2025 federal firings. For Idorado cleanup efforts, they've covered the mine tailings for stabilization purposes. They've created runoff control ditches from that mine drainage sites to prevent any further erosion and corroding into the streams. They've done a lot of work. However, the compliance performance objective has not been met on zinc concentrations in Red Mountain Creek. These difficulties have been due to the high elevation, cold temperatures, accessibility, and that naturally occurring pH. There's a lot of innovative methods out there. One that they've considered using is a bacterial method of like a microbial induced carbonate precipitation. Basically, the bacteria would remove the metals from the streams, but because of the extreme conditions up on Red Mountain, it'll be difficult to keep the bacteria alive, and also cleanup of the precipitate of any sort of sludge or brine is also difficult. For any further analysis or work that's been done in our area, in 2025, the Forest Service did a site characterization in cooperation with the EPA, and they did environmental exposure concerns on Forest Service lands only in Red Mountain, and water quality and stream flow measurements were conducted, and also soil XRF analysis was taken. So that's just determining what is in the soil in terms of the metals. And I got to be a part of that. That was a really cool experience, a very awesome dream come true to work with the EPA. So finally, back to UWP's mission statement. How can we improve the natural, scenic, and economic values of the Upper Unk? We can try to improve to the natural background state of Red Mountain Creek and other impaired streams. Also, UWP has been involved in trying to get projects off the ground of restoring the high alpine fens or wetlands that are up there, kind of near Crystal Reservoir, and any sort of bank vegetation to filter out metals. Wetlands are really good at doing that. So that will hopefully bring back more life into the upper basin for natural and scenic value. And if there's more life in the upper basin, that could bring more fly fishing industry boosts to our area. And also for an uncertain warming future, any sort of water drinking sources. Crystal Reservoir has been what talked a lot about in the news recently with Ouray County, Ouray City, hopefully purchasing the reservoir for drinking water purposes. A quick special thank you to the Ouray History Museum, Barbara Bennett from CDPHE, and Jeff Littoral from the Colorado Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety. Here are my references, and that's about it for me. Thank you, guys.
Great. I wanted to point out, so we actually, I believe that as a River Corps member, we had Virginia do a wider depth of activities than a lot of the other ones did. And so this is a report, you know, of why she was doing some of the work that she was doing. But in fact, what she was doing while she was with us is measuring streams and the flow. And so there's another report that she's just putting out this week, not in presentation format, but in reporting format, that really describes that intersection of that water flow and water quality that goes more into depth than that. That is really interesting. We release soon. Dee, do you have a question there?
Yes, well, actually I do. And Preston got back to me with the, did you all see that in the chat of the usage? So here's my question, Virginia. Well, not really a question, but I just want to thank you because I work at the Box Canyon Park during the summer, and every single person, it seems like, wants to know, why is that water orange? And you know, they're all convinced that it's some kind of deadly poison that's coming downstream. So now I can tell them, hey, it's 50-50. 50% of it is natural and 50% of it is from the mines. And so, but thank you for that detail. I appreciate that.
I think, yeah, a lot of people don't know, and because this is such a extreme, unique area, and I think we can kind of forget that there is such like naturally occurring minerals in the earth that is causing the streams to have that lower pH. But of course, we've had such an extensive mining history, so there's just a lot to take into consideration, and it can be kind of confusing too. I think sometimes I'm still wrapping my brain around all of it.
We say to them, well, did you look at the mountains? Red Mountain 1, Red Mountain 2, Red Mountain 3. That might give you a clue.
Right. Yeah. It is pretty interesting. Actually, I didn't include it. This is some unpublished data from that EPA report, but they were finding some pretty different water above the mining district that was still had a pretty normal pH of water. So it is there is a lot of factors that go into it. It's a little bit of naturally occurring, but also the water is pretty good before it's kind of going through any sort of significant mining areas.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, where we get our drinking water, like for instance with Ridgway, are in areas that there's a lot less acidic water and a lot less of that leaching of the metals, so it's good water. And even in the area, as Virginia was just saying, obviously the city of Ouray picks clean water sources, you know, the ones that they don't have to pull all those metals out of, or as many metals out of, otherwise it would be really difficult. I wanted to read Preston's thing in case anybody has trouble reading it, or if it's not visible to the people who watch the YouTube later, which is, during the winter, daily water consumption in Ridgway on a per capita basis is about 80 gallons per day. During the summer, daily water consumption on a per capita basis is around 250 gallons per day. So it's even much greater than half.
Yeah.
Phil, did you have a question?
Yeah, Virginia, thank you. Again, excellent report. Very, very helpful. I like the historical reminder that the name Uncompahgre may actually give us a clue as to what the water quality was like just from the name alone, possibly, due to just natural conditions. But anyway, I know that there's growing concern throughout Uray County over off-road vehicle recreation. And I'm just wondering if you know of any work that's been done where the impact of off-road vehicles in the high country is having effects on water quality, at least increasing sediment loads and so on due to erosion. I don't know. But where do things stand on that at this point in terms of the science?
I'm honestly not sure what has been done. You can see it in the summer. It's crazy in Uray. There's lots of ATVs and Jeeps going around, and definitely kind of going back to again to that EPA sampling, talking to some of their experts. Um, with the soil analysis, there is a significant amount of um, lead and arsenic up on County Road 31 that goes through some of those old legacy mines where the Yankee Girl mine is, the famous Headgate and Genesee mine. And that definitely, I think we should consider more of because uh, the way that you are exposed to heavy metals, can be, of course, through if it's you're exposed to the water, but in terms of the soil, that really fine particulate matter, the really, really fine dust can be what really affects your lungs and your more accessible way of getting any of the metals into your system. So at this moment, I don't know how much it is affecting. I think we that could be something UWP could be focusing on soon is how much it is the dust could be coming into any of the waterways, such as up at Lake Como, and also how much it's really impacting the air quality and kicking up the dust and any sort of metals in from the mining sites.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think these are good times to say leave no trace rules, which is that I mean, this is a safe place to recreate, Uray County. It's just that, don't go off trail and off road when you're not supposed to, not just because you're going to ruin vegetation, but it could be dangerous for several reasons. Um, so it's better just to stay on the trails and not bother the environment or get into an unsafe situation.
Exactly. I think it's safer for the environment and it's safer for you to stay on trail.
Yeah.
So Virginia, do you ever see them EPA working again to get Idorado in compliance?
So what
It's
the
been so long.
there's been a lot of work going on. So back to the TMDLs that I was talking about, because Idorado, it's kind of a technical formality. That area is not really considered a Superfund area. This is all sort of legally binding agreements between the state and Idorado. So some of the work that's been going on is trying to establish those total maximum daily loads from CDPHE from the state, setting those kind of standards in the streams, kind of giving a little push to Idorado. They're very open with us. They talk a lot with UWP and have been supportive in trying to get information out to the community, which is something UWP might try to do is get Idorado to kind of have a talk with the community potentially next year. But this is also just another site characterization that the EPA did. But it's also a little confusing too because there's Idorado or privately owned land, and then there's Forest Service land. So all of the
Right.
site characterization was done on Forest Service land. So that's just kind of more information to come out and get more action, basically.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and the EPA actually doesn't have regulatory authority on that. I mean, at the moment, it's the Colorado Department of Public Health that's working with them. But yeah, we're hoping
Interesting.
for more communication.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This was
I
really interesting. Thank you, Virginia. And
Thank
like
you.
Bill, I really appreciated the historical reference.
Yes, if I'm sure probably everyone, or maybe I don't know, if you haven't been to the Uray History Museum, it is just overwhelming the amount of information you can get from them. And they were very kind enough to let me come in and do some of my research for this report. And so I have to give a shout out again. Please go visit the Uray History Museum. They're amazing over there.
And I wanted to bring up a point about that crystal reservoir if it gets filled again. From what I understand, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. So even though they're refilling it because of to supplement drinking water, that water itself would not be used for drinking water. It would be exchanged with other people who have senior rights for water use. And so they would get that particular water as an exchange. And therefore, the city of Uray would be able to keep its using the source from Weehawken that it's using now, rather than having to stop using it. So
Right. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
correct. Yeah, I just think it's an important, as we talk about all those metals up in the crystal
Mhm.
reservoir area, and then we say, and then we're going to use it for drinking water. I just
Yeah.
be a little, and I wanted to, I can only do this with Virginia since she's up with UWP, but I wanted to mention with UWP our values, because I don't know whether everybody realizes, like what our group is and like what our real focus is. But educating, engaging, and fostering environmental stewardship, that I think is probably obvious, especially participating in this. But we also are very tied to using a science-based approach. We do like in community engagement to get, and we have that too, leveraging partnerships with collaborators, but all of our recommendations are based on science. And then here's the important one that I wanted to bring up, which is acknowledging natural challenges in the watershed. So we're not just here going, oh, all water should be pristine, that's the way it is, like that's the utopian view. We do realize that we already have challenges. So we want to, address water restoration in the areas that it makes the most sense and that is effective. And then we have a couple other important values, but I just thought that was good to bring up in this setting.
Right. Right.
I like how UWP sees how reciprocal the relationships are between all the stakeholders that are in our watershed. That's a real high priority. We want all of them to be happy. But that requires reciprocity. In other words, we have to just constantly balance various needs against each other or sometimes with each other. So I like that. And also, this is sort of unrelated, but I really like the way we've been most recently reaching out to the recreational folks.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't introduce Phil earlier, but he is on the UWP board. We have 8 board members, and he's one of them. He also supports other nonprofits in the community by a lot of volunteering, but he's a valuable resource on our board. So thanks for being here, Phil. Any other questions or discussion?
This was very interesting. Thank you. The whole day was interesting.
Yeah, I really wish we could have had that groundwater and wells, because they're, an important part in Uray County. And I don't think people talk enough about them. We had some free well testing a few years ago. For 5 years, people could get their well water tested for free through a 6-county project. And I think people were a little bit timid of it, and not everybody did do that program. And I think it's important for people to think about that. But the next, the final event for this WrightED series, we have 2 snow experts. So that's going to be really fun. Snowpack and talking about snow is sometimes a little bit depressing, because especially right now when it's such a late snow.
No snow.
Yeah. But also fun because snow is fun and we can have fun on snow. Any parting thoughts, Kate?
Snow's coming, I hear on Sunday.
Really? For
That's
sure?
what well, no, I'm never sure.
So can
I
we,
follow that. Does anybody follow the Durango weather guy? Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
no,
There's a man, he lives in Durango and he goes by the Durango weather guy. I'm gonna see if I can pull up his actual name, but he's just like kind of a hobby weatherist, kind of like Karen Rich is here in Uray for us. But you subscribe to like an email blast from him, and he's pretty accurate. And so he sends an email usually like tracking the storm or here it comes, and he's like a super geek about it. It's really cool. So anyway, he says it's gonna come on Sunday. So let's just check in next Wednesday and see. That's it. Lois found it. Thanks,
All
Lois.
right.
oh, Durango weather guy. Yeah, got it.
Nice.
Also, how lucky are we that we got to see the Northern Lights here in Ridgeway
I know.
Oh,
last
will we be
night?
able to see him tonight, I mean? Do you
I think so.
Oh, I hope so. God, I can't believe we missed it. Ah,
Mm.
okay.
And luckily
tonight
they
for
weren't
sure.
so late. Like I missed a lot of the other ones because they're like at 1 in the morning. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not staying up till 1 in the morning
Mm.
just to watch.
About what
I could see
time was it
photos.
last night? About what time was it last night?
I saw it at 10 o'clock myself. They said it was supposedly going almost to 11:30, but I
Oh,
think
wow.
that in our area, in Montrose, it was 10:30. It was getting pretty weak.
Okay.
It was pretty good at like 7:30, 8:30 actually though.
Oh,
So
really?
from
cool.
Ridgeway.
Great.
Lee,
Excellent.
you might have to get out of your box canyon to see it.
No, I'm at the pool tonight, Bill. It's going to be fabulous.
Yeah,
Imagine.
Okay.
yeah. Tamara Gouldy and some others I saw posted pretty nice ones from your area.
Yeah,
I was like,
really.
"Ooh."
Yeah, really nice. Really nice. Well, this was great. Thank you all. See you next week.
Thanks
Yeah.
for
Thanks,
coming,
Steve.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Thanks.
Preston and Virginia.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.